appetite for horror.
You're making Charles Manson look a good guy.
You don't get it because it's artists.
The insane influence of Charles Manson.
The mind that you live in, the thought that you live in, is a family.
Tonight is the night of resurrection. Charlie's coming home tonight.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Horror, episode lucky number 13. My name is Brando. Excited to talk to our two guests today, father and son duo, Frank Grillo, which you may know from The Purge, Captain America Civil War. I mean, the guy is just everywhere, a big-time actor in Hollywood. And his son, his directorial debut, Remy Grillo, in the new film, The Resurrection of Charles Manson. Really excited, as are a lot of people, to talk to them. So just to give you a heads up, I am last on the radio tour this morning. And that's part of what I do for iHeartRadio and Premier Radio Networks, and what we do. We do radio tours for people promoting movies, books, shows, all that stuff. We just did one with Bruce Campbell, who's touring the country with Bruce Orama. And we put together a bunch of radio stations, whether it's 10 to 20 radio stations across the United States. And upcoming, and we're going to hear from my producer friend, my coworker Bill. He's going to chime in and let me know when it's my turn to interview Frank and Remy, and then we're going to be out because they got to move on to the next one. It's fun. They're meant for morning radio, kind of a quick tour, but me with my in radio, we get to have fun for about 10 minutes, right, with Frankie and Remy Grillo, and I believe our time is here.
Hey, Brando, you there?
Hey, Bill, how are you?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Living the dream.
Is this a new podcast?
Yeah, a new spinoff. I'm doing a spinoff, kind of like
nice.
Happy Days, Joni Loves Chachi kind of thing.
Hopefully it won't jump the shark, man.
They don't. That's an old reference. I get it, but my son doesn't.
Joni loves Chachi.
I thank you. I appreciate that. And that might be a good question to start everything. Welcome to the podcast, both Remy and Frank. How are you, sirs?
Good, thanks.
Well, I guess that kind of leads into my first question, because yes, my mothership podcast, while I work with Bill for Premier Radio and iHeart Radio, I have a Guns N' Roses podcast, Appetite for Distortion, that I've been doing for a few years. And I just love horror movies so much. I found myself doing that mostly in my free time. So yeah, this spin-off Appetite for Horror, and just so excited just from the trailer. I can't wait to see the entire movie. And I guess with the age difference, here's the connection. I guess, how is the perception with Charles Manson? Because here's somebody who's been a legend, infamous for so long, but there's so many movies out there, but this is a new perspective. So I guess, Remy, you being younger, what's your perspective on Charles Manson? And then, Frank, I'll ask you after that, since you may have kind of grew up with that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously always knew the name Charles Manson and kind of what he was associated with, but I never really knew him. And so diving into this movie and starting to watch and listen to him, and you see from when he's a younger guy to when he's old in prison, he was fascinating to me. He was oddly profound at times, but then again is known for these horrific acts. So it was really cool to get to learn about him, and then use that to apply it to parts of the film and maybe character traits, and then use his music throughout. It was a fun experience.
Right on. And Frank, what about you? What was what's your perception of Charles Manson and growing up? Were you around when those murders were happening?
No, I guess it happened when I was born.
Okay.
But I know a lot about Charles Manson. He's been in the news over the course of the last 5 decades a lot, and he's just one of those characters in history that is like just so infamous and infamous. I was also curious about Charles Manson in a different way when we were making this movie, and I discovered his music, and then I discovered more about what might have caused the snap and the murders, and what makes a guy like Charles Manson or a David Koresh so appealing to some people, because they are, and they still continue to be. People are still drawn to these crazy people, these sociopaths. who are always somehow comparing themselves to Jesus Christ.
So I guess with this Manson movie, for lack of a better phrase, the Resurrection of Charles Manson, you kind of hit it where people are still influenced. So for people who haven't seen the trailer yet, what can you say about this movie without, of course, giving anything away?
Yeah, I mean, the movie follows what you think is a young couple going out to the desert to shoot a Charles Manson film and end up getting caught by this modern day family, but you come to find out that the couple's not really a couple, and there's a twist there. And it is about this group of people trying to take his, Manson's kind of final words and bring it back and bring him back through, human sacrifice.
This sounds fun.
It's a good family picture. You bring your kids, you get some popcorn, and it's really fun for all ages.
I love that. And actually, that's another good segue with kids. I'm actually a few weeks away from having my first.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Good deal, man. That's fantastic.
Thank you. I'm gonna wait before I start showing him scary movies. No,
I saw Sixth Sense when I was 6.
Okay, all right. So there's the question, I guess. Growing up and raising Remy, that could be a movie or a book, I guess.
Yeah, right.
I guess how did Remy? Did you automatically get into the business seeing your dad in all these films, or is it just did you forge your own path? I guess I want to know how, because my dad was a dentist. I'm not a dentist, obviously. So how did this kind of path come together? And this is your first I know this is your first major movie, but is this the first time you're really working together, father and son?
Yeah, it's the first time really
working together in this capacity.
Right.
I did a show called Kingdom, and he was a PA in the summers. And then I would take him with me periodically. I did a film in China. He came with me. He's been on sets with me a lot. So we've worked together per se, but not in the creative space.
No, and I think, I've grown up visiting him on set, and, obviously when you go on sets, you're not hanging out in front of the camera. I was always hanging out with crew, and they became people that I just loved being around and loved that kind of environment and that community, and then the creative aspect of it. And as I was going through school, it was different. I loved writing when I was younger, and then at some point along the way, it was I want to use a camera. I want to do cinematography. And then as I went to film school, I want to direct. So it was always something that was in my brain. I knew I wanted to do it. It was just how I was going to get there and where I was going to fall.
Any challenges, or did you look at it kind of like, okay, I get to direct my dad the first time around? There's a little bit of a safety net there. And I guess on the flip side of that, Frank, are you approaching this like an actor? Will you tell him off like a director, or or is he your son and you act differently?
Normally, when it's a young guy, you want to see what he's going to do. It's like a fight. You get in there and you kind of move around the first couple of rounds just to feel him out. And then, if you got to, knock him out really quick. But when he's your son and I was really there to kind of lend my experience to him so that whatever things I saw that were going to go awry, I could prevent for him, but still let him know that they're out there and why you shouldn't do it this way. So I really wanted to help him in that sense. And I think we did that, and I knew he felt a little intimidated, and I didn't want me being there to change his behavior. So I really wanted him to know that I was there to help him.
Very cool. And what about Remy? Was that any sort of, did it add pressure, or was it a level of comfort having your dad there, who's been a professional in the industry for so long?
It was both. It was, when he came on for about 3 days, and it was towards the end of our second week, and I don't think I was really prepared for the I don't want to say intimidation, but seeing him on set, and obviously we're in these roles, and it was a moment of, oh wow, we're doing this. And then we got through the first scene, and it was fun. And then it was super comfortable, and we had our normal kind of back and forth, and we were able to solve problems that came up. And him being on set was the easiest part of the whole shoot.
Right on. That's good to hear.
I want you to find another director to ever say that.
That's very true. I know our time is limited, and you guys have already had a long morning. I just want to ask Frank, because I know you're pretty famous for being in The Purge. My wife is a dance teacher. I know this is a weird segue, but one of the schools, because she does dance competitions, right? They did a Purge theme, and they were disqualified. So I'm curious of what your thoughts were. Like, is that?
Yeah, that's kind of like making a Manson movie. That's right. It's I'm scratching my head about that one.
Yeah, I think they all were, but I appreciate the effort. I guess.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for your time. I hope we get to do this again. I can't wait to see Remy, where your career goes, and Frank, you're awesome in everything that you're in.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
You guys take care.
Have a good.
Thanks, Bill.
Brandon.
Short but sweet. I was really excited to speak with both Remy and Frank today, and sometimes I get a presser link to be able to watch a movie if I'm going to interview somebody, but not this time. So I'm excited to see The Resurrection of Charles Manson. The trailer is out. It looks good, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. And it is interesting that, how many Charles Manson movies that are going to come out. All these serial killers, Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, and we still keep watching them. These real life horror figures. It's not just like it's Jason Voorhees or it's Freddy Krueger or it's The Purge, kind of make-believe stories. These are real people that did really horrible things. And I guess maybe we're so disassociated. We're able to keep making movies and entertainment off them, but this is a unique approach to it. I like the way they're approaching it, where it's not Charles himself, but the influence after, and it just looks really good. So if you're not familiar with this podcast, perhaps it's the first time you're hearing it. I did this kind of short interview a few episodes ago with Michael Jai White, of course, from Spawn and a lot of other things, where it's part of these short interviews come up through my job. This podcast is just for me, fun. Yes, I don't know where you're listening to it. Maybe iHeartRadio. Maybe you're watching it on my YouTube channel. It's all the podcast in general is a spin-off of just my passion, and that's hosting and interviewing. My regular job is producing and audio editing and all that fun stuff, and a whole past life and classic rock radio and all that fun stuff. But I always found myself watching horror movies in my spare time, and I'm just kind of surprised it's taken me this long to do a horror podcast. 13 episodes into this, but it could have been like my Guns N' Roses podcast, where I'm approaching 400 episodes, because I've seen thousands of horror movies, and now, other than, of course, I will reach out and I will interview people on my own, contact the way you normally contact, email and network and all that fun stuff. But throughout my few years here at iHeart, every Halloween around there especially, that there are just people promoting movies, horror movies. And it's just like, wow, I would really like to talk to them about that. I just never had the platform to do so until now, until Appetite for Horror. And I'm just really excited to talk more about my favorite genre with some new directors like Remy Grillo, some seasoned veterans like Frank, and just seeing where this podcast is going to go. And it's going to be a lot of fun, especially when my son gets here and he gets to that age of starting to watch scary movies. I'm going to start him off, obviously. I don't even know. Where am I going to show him Monster Squad or Tales from the Crypt Keeper, the cartoon? Do I start him out with Little Monsters with Fred Savage and Howie Mandel? But I'm thinking way too far ahead. But these are going to be fun conversations to have then. So it's just showing you a path that I want to take with this podcast. If you are a newbie, as I'm starting to build this fan base, because it's just interesting to go from the Guns N' Roses one, where I'm getting picked up by all these news outlets and people know Appetite for Distortion, and then going back to Appetite for Horror, where we're still kind of laying the foundation. So I appreciate every single one of you getting in on the ground floor on Appetite for Horror. So get in the ground floor with me, conversation always continues in between the broadcasts, okay? I don't know how often I'm going to do these episodes. I would love to do them once a week, but, with a baby coming and a lot of other, my job and all this stuff, I don't know, it's been like once every 2 weeks, something like that. But just if you want to just kind of check in, or if you have a guest suggestion, hey, I just saw this movie, it would be really cool to hear from the director. Do you think you can try to make an interview happen? That's what I'm going to be here for. I want to hear from you who, it could be a new movie, an old movie. It could be a random, character that one of your favorite characters in a horror movie that maybe is not famous, but you've always wanted to just know more about that role. Hit me up, okay? Appetite for Horror, the number 4, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Even there's a playlist on my YouTube channel, which is Appetite for Distortion, and there's a playlist, Appetite for Horror, on there. And we'll just continue to talk about our favorite scary movies and all things here on Appetite for Horror. I'm really looking forward to talking to more of you as we go along. So until then, when will you see the next episode of Appetite for Horror? In the words of the Crypt Keeper, until next time, boils and ghouls.